Over to you, Minister Quinn.
Thank you. Ireland being Ireland, we all know each other, and I've known Ali for a long time. Her father, who's happily still alive, was a passionate architect, but also a passionate athlete. And I travelled many years ago. It was the opening of the whole wide world as far as I was concerned. We flew to Paris and got a train down as far as Hendaye, changed over into the Spanish wide gauge. It was wide gauge to stop Spain being invaded by rail, because the Prussian armies had been transported all around Germany and into France. And they kept on running up and down the town. It was a group of athletes going to student games, Catholic student games in Lisbon, and he kept on down because they were neighbours of us where we lived. He said, "Roar, roar! Did you see that? Did you see this? Did you see that?" etc. As you can imagine. I wanted to be an architect from a very long time as a young person, and making things and putting things together was something that I did. I didn't think that it was abnormal until some people said, "Well, you know, that's not what everybody does." And I've always, as an architect, been particularly interested in cities. I studied for a year with a man called Constantinos Doxiadis, that the Cypriot ambassador would possibly recognise as the name, who, among other things, did the master plan for Islamabad and did the master plan for Riyadh, and invented, or was the first to apply computers to the process of urbanism and town planning. And for those of you who are planners, and I know Kieran Rose and a few others are here, there was an English academic, Brian J. McLaughlin, if I have his name correctly, who wrote a textbook on the application of planners to, or of computers to planning, without a single reference to Constantinos Doxiadis. I became aware of the kind of cultural divide and the attempted intellectual of Anglo-Saxon culture in the international world. Why did I accept this invitation this evening? First of all, it's always lovely to talk about a passion. And even though I'm a politician, you never stop being an architect. It's kind of the default position that we fall into. The reason why I really wanted to come to it was because I've been to Tel Aviv. And I went to Tel Aviv about 2 years ago with the Oireachtas group and a group of business people. And we wanted to develop business links and political links and to exchange. The Department of Foreign Affairs in Israel didn't know how to handle this both. And they said, well, we'll pay for the politicians, but we won't pay for the business people. The business people. I said, no, we're not divided. They come to all the briefings, and we go to all this. So we ended up in this absolutely spectacular hotel in the middle of Tel Aviv called the Cinema Hotel, which is an old projector cinema hotel. And that was great, and we had a great sort of time in that. But for those of you who haven't seen it or haven't seen the literature around the White City and the history of the White City and the way it was democratically put together as a group of Israeli settlers, walked off into the equivalent of Dollyman Strand with a hinterland from Clontarf, and basically drew up a master plan. The name of the British planner who provided the master plan will come to me in a second. But yes, a very famous planner. It will take, to use a phrase with which you're familiar, it will take the eye out of your head. It is as pure a BauHaus integrated jewel as Bath is a Georgian city, or dare I say it, even Dublin is a Georgian city. It is breathtaking. And the mature planting, and we were there in late autumn, the mature planting is not only a break from the heat and a cover, but it actually, the counterpoise between the organic nature of all the trees and the wonderful stylistic linear alphabet and style of BauHaus is just, in musical terms, the counterpoint between the two is just spectacular. And it goes on and on and on. You just don't, it's not like a little corner, little quarter. The contrast between that and Jerusalem is, as somebody irreverently said to me, the contrast between Sodom and Gomorrah. But I'll let you make your own interpretation of that as you choose. But chalk and cheese comes to mind in a less value sort of sense. I love the idea of cities talking to cities. I love the idea of people understanding that people live in other cities. I love the open democratic spirit in which this particular proposal has come about. And as you say, we are both fortunate, the people of Israel and the people of Ireland, the citizens of Dublin and the citizens of Tel Aviv, to live in democratic society. That doesn't mean you always love the government, but you adore the country and you pay allegiance to the state. And we have seen that in this country, and we've seen it repeatedly in Israel. I am very much in favour of maintaining and developing dialogue and contact with the State of Israel. So much so, as Bose and myself know, we're in the process of finalising a memorandum of understanding in areas of education between our two countries.
He deserves it.
Because of what is happening and what continues to happen, there will be different things said, and we had some of it outside. I think everybody who participates in this exercise of engagement and the exhibitions that flow from it and the photographs in the book that Paul and Monty are working on, and hopefully we will see a big visual manifestation of that exhibition sometime, and even if there's a three-dimensional model or now computer graphics, all of the things that you can now do so easily. I think an awful lot of people who have a genuine interest in design, but who have no image of Tel Aviv. They've sadly an image of Israel and an image of Palestine and the West Bank and all the rest of it, which is the sort of image, quite frankly, that most people had of Ireland when you mentioned where you were from. And in travelling around the country or the continent, from where? From Iceland? No, Ireland. And then say, Belfast, boom, boom. We know that. We know that. We've lived through it. And there is a whole other dimension to the BauHaus, and think of its origins, and think of many of the people who in fact fled from Germany or chose to make the voyage to Israel, or what was then Palestine, with the view to creating or participation in the establishment of a Jewish state. And they took from BauHaus and all of the design theories that were developed there an entire repertoire which they then went on to perfect in a way that you really have to see to understand. And it's when you see, because most of our BauHaus buildings tended to be standalone ones here, there wasn't the holistic urbanistic completion of the relatively few but significant buildings that we have in Dublin and through the rest of Ireland. And some of them disappeared, like the IMCO building, or the Aspro factory, which has now been distorted in a particular way. So if you really want to see how BauHaus was transported, adapted to the climate, the Mediterranean climate, where in fact you don't have the damp stains staining down the white walls, fortunately, things that we as architects can't do in Dublin. You have to have a gutter at the top, otherwise you get all the streaking in relation to it. I think the BauHaus guys must have been, and they were mostly guys, must have been fundamentally Mediterraneanists at heart in all of this. To conclude, can I say that I would like to see this work develop. I would like to see further contacts between Ireland and Israel, contacts of mutual benefit. I would like to look at the way in which Israel as a state has evolved. But it has evolved in an area that was the first in the world to urbanize. There has been a continuous urbanizing tradition, an urban tradition, stretching from the Euphrates River right across to what is now Palestine and Israel and other areas. The Israelis and their predecessors have been doing urbanism for millions, not millions, for thousands of years. And most of the things that was transported and exported to other parts of the world originated from a Western perspective, and by that I include all of Europe and obviously North America and Latin America and beyond, originated in that tiny space. We are forever indebted to the commitment to them. And for me, both as a socialist and as an architect, for me, civilizations are cities were the cradle of civilization and the guarantor of human liberty. Peasants and serfs fled to the city for freedom. people who felt repressed for their opinions that they had, for their sexual orientation, and for all sorts of things, fled to the comfort and the freedom of the city. And the city grew as a one big, warm, embracing envelope of buildings and spaces that put their arms around them and encouraged them and nurtured them and liberated them. And that's why you can look at what Dublin has done and what Tel Aviv has done, talk to each other and share that journey. Thank you very much indeed.